Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. And this is episode 105, and it's going to be called Monday, Tuesday, No Day. And I got a little experimental on this one, not just for the, purposes of getting experimental, but because I wanted to tell a certain story in a certain way. And anyway, hopefully you like it. It involves some things that have been sort of on my mind recently, and so it was in some ways very easy, in some ways very difficult to write, and I hope you like it. Jerry Staunton looked out his living room window at an angle towards his neighbor's house. He could only see a corner of it, but it still brought a frown to his face. After a moment, he decided to draw the curtains and walk back to the kitchen, where his wife Pam was just starting to make dinner. "We need to do something about that neighbor of ours," he said. Though he was no longer looking out at the bright world outside, his face was pinched into a perpetual squint. "He's a neighbor. There's nothing to do," Pam replied. "Chop these carrots, please." Maybe," Jerry said, "but maybe not." Pam just shook her head a little at that. "Why does he bother you so much?" she asked. "He's been nothing but polite the few times I've met him." Jerry didn't say anything for a while. Then, still cutting carrots, he said, "Maybe, but I don't like him." "Okay, then, don't like him." Jerry thought back, trying to remember what had made him dislike his new neighbor so much. He couldn't even remember his name. Mike, he thought. He supposed it was one of the first times he had seen Mike at the neighborhood mailbox stand. Mike was just getting his mail when Jerry had walked up. "Hello, neighbor," he remembered saying. "God bless you this Flag Day." Mike had paused for a moment, and that moment was what made Jerry dislike Mike. Mike had then said, "Happy Flag Day. Have a good one," and walked back into his house. That pause. Was it because Jerry had invoked God? Or did Mike dislike Flag Day? Maybe both. Whatever. Jerry had looked at Mike with a jaundiced eye ever since. But it was so subtle, he didn't think he could explain it to Pam. She would say he was blowing it out of proportion, or he was mistaken. Heck, maybe Mike was hard of hearing, or had gotten a particularly strange piece of mail that had distracted him. Come to think of it, maybe he had been too hard on Mike. Maybe he should try to let him have a clean slate. And it really didn't matter. He only saw Mike a few times a month, usually at the mailbox. Retirement went by both at a snail's pace and also all at once. One day, Jerry saw his neighbor and noticed that the young man was graying at the temples. "Getting a little snow on the roof there," Jerry said. "Yeah, Jerry." His neighbor's eyes flicked up to his own bald pate, but apparently he couldn't come up with a rejoinder. The next time he saw him, he couldn't remember the young man's name. Fortunately, he didn't have to say his name, and Jerry had gotten used to making excuses for not remembering small things. He had a lot off his mind, and he liked it that way. "Why remember crap I'm not interested in at my age?" he would ask Pam. Pam would usually nod and continue whatever she was doing. But not remembering was scary, too. Jerry found that the less he could remember, the worse the world seemed. He took to carrying his old service pistol with him whenever he thought Pam wasn't looking. He kept it in a little used drawer in the drawing room near the front door. He wasn't sure if she even knew he still had it. On the occasions when she left him alone at home, which were becoming fewer each month, he would clean his pistol. It gave him satisfaction to know he still had something that he could do, something that had purpose. He didn't remember the last time he went to get the mail. Even right after it happened, he had only vague pieces. Closing the door behind him, looking across the street to the mailbox stack, making sure there was no traffic, getting out his key and opening the door, hearing someone come up behind him. He didn't recognize the man. The man stepped right up to him with something in his hand. He stepped back, took out his gun. The man yelled. He shot. The man fell. Within days, even those were gone. Jerry was in a hospice facility. Pam came to see him, but couldn't move in with him. The days now floated by. He couldn't even tell you if they went by fast or slow. Time had no meaning. A lot of people came to talk to Jerry. Psychiatrists, investigators, policemen. He didn't know why they came. He had nothing to tell them. Sometimes he missed Pam. Sometimes he missed his gun. He rarely knew what day of the week it was, nor the month, nor the date. And sometimes he forgot, not just the year, but what decade he was in. The world was a small room that he didn't remember. Sometimes a woman was there. Sometimes he knew her as Pam. He had dated her in his youth. His time in the service was one of the last to go. Then his youth was all he had. And then that was gone. And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Like I said, a little experimental this time. And yeah, so obviously it follows some rules, like Chekhov's rule, but it certainly breaks some other ones, and sort of for thematic reasons, I guess you would call them. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this. We'll be back next week with another story. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.